So I bet you anything right now that I look extremely weird and unattractive, but seriously, when is a better time to film a writing video? Today I will be talking about another facet of writing, and that is two separate things. The first being identity, and the second being dealing with disappointment. And those are actually very closely linked for anyone who is an artist and a creator that is judged on a scale which is very subjective. The first thing I might want to mention is how this whole topic came about. And that is because there is a highly regarded competition across the entire United States given in the arts, those being graphic arts of painting and drawing, etc., as well as writing and all the genres and subgenres of both of those. Non-ironically, these are called the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and I actually entered last year with a few of these photos that I never thought would ever amount to anything, and I managed to get a silver key and 2 honorable mentions. I will never be able to tell you how that happened, considering I am a crap photographer, and the actual time and effort put into editing and taking those photos was definitely nothing in comparison to even the worst submitted drawing or sculpture or anything else of that variety. That is just a little preface as to my history with these Scholastic Awards. And in mid-December of last year, I sent off my entries of 2 different pieces. The first being a portfolio of 5 different poems, which I titled, this is so original, actually not considering it's me, denouement, which of course means a conclusion or final point to a story. And I meant it kind of as a conclusion as to who I am in terms of a person and a poet for that point in time, which was of course last December. And even though I know it's only the beginning of February, I feel like I am in no way the same poet that I was back then. And I submitted that one thinking it would not amount to anything. And then there was washing dishes. I legitimately am not quite sure if I've shared this on my blog or anything like that. And it is an extremely personal essay, not quite on the level of Silence and Shatterings, but pretty close to that. And it was, I believe, a 5-6 paragraph essay about myself and basically telling my life story through the 4 different households I've lived in and my experience of washing dishes in all 4 of those and the very poignant times of my life that this affected. I came up with the premise, I'm not going to say solely to enter in Scholastic, but that was my big end goal, which was to actually get down this memoir, edit, revise it, and be able to send it off to Scholastic and see what would happen. On the 3rd of February, the results came back, and they were not what I expected and not what I hoped. And that is where the whole dealing with disappointment comes in, because I didn't win anything for washing dishes, and I only got an honorable mention for my portfolio of poetry. I, of course, had my own private session of why did this happen to me kind of thing, and I'm going to admit it to you right now, at this point in time, I still am a little bit bitter about it, but at the same time, it taught me a very important lesson, and I don't want to be cliche, but in this case I kind of have to, because I learned a lot more about myself and I gained a much more valuable lesson through, in my mind, losing, which actually was just not winning, than I did if I had maybe taken home gold on either of my pieces that I submitted. A lot of my friends who are artists in their own right shared with me their own stories about how fickle Scholastic can be and how they actually do the judging, because it is very much a rubric thing, because they have thousands and thousands of entries to look through, and especially because the particular facet of writing in these particular awards is for the entire Northeast region versus just locally, and that is what the art awards are actually for. And what they told me was basically my voice may not have been what they were looking for exactly. Maybe it didn't fit into their rubric in terms of what they were looking for technically. And I also had 2 different friends tell me stories of how they worked forever on their own art pieces and they got either no award at all or just an honorable mention, and of course in their minds, because of all the effort they put into it, they thought they deserved much higher. And the thing is, because of the way the winning entries are made public, you can see what won gold, you can see what won honorable mentions, and sometimes, whether it's me or anyone else who has entered a work into Scholastic, they're just like, how did that win blank when mine didn't win anything or just won this. To be honest, in terms of my conversational, colloquial emotions towards this loss, I am bitter, but in terms of my actual opinion on it, I'm over it by now. It took me a while, but I'm over it. And the main thing I want to take away from it is basically, if this had happened 2, 3 years, even a year ago, I probably would be in a much worse shape in terms of my own opinion of myself. And to be honest, I fall prey to everything that all of you people out there, I know you fall prey to it as well, and that is just the identity crisis and the disappointment, and when something goes wrong, you wonder if you were meant to do this thing in the first place. I came into this knowing I was going to sound completely cliche, but I did not know I was going to sound this cliche. But basically what I'm trying to come across with is the point, even if one judge, even if one person, even if one contest thinks that you're crap, or maybe they didn't even say that, maybe you just didn't win what you wanted to, that does not mean that you are not an artist. That does not mean you are not a creator and a writer and someone who has a vivid imagination and who actually has a very solid, good plot and characters and technique. You just may not have been what they were looking for. And on the whole identity front, I'm able to say that even though this one loss happened, that I don't think of myself as any less of a writer than I was before it happened, and as any less, this is gonna sound really egotistical, but I don't think of my quality of work as any less. It's just because one panel of judges decided I wasn't good enough for what they were looking for. And I have my own victory, which I shared in the previous writing vlog, about the fact that I killed it, and the intensive writing workshop I'd been wanting to get into for months had accepted me. And that in its own is a huge victory, and that is kind of what has been able to stave off my ego and my hurt feelings of not winning anything from Scholastic. On the whole identity front, which is what the latter half of this video is about, I also want to say that I am not completely secure in my identity as a poet. You may or may not know this from watching my previous writing vlogs, but I am very much a multi-genre author. My best genre, in terms of what I get the most results for, as well as the quality, and in terms of the pride I take in this particular genre, that would be creative nonfiction, because I have found that there is no better story that I can tell at this stage in my life than my own, and I really do enjoy getting into the nitty-gritty of what happened to me 2 hours ago or what happened 10 years ago. The other genre that I focus on a lot on this channel is fiction, because of course I've won NaNoWriMo 2 years in a row. I have yet to do anything with that draft, but we're going to talk about that in another video. And in particular, that is the genre I am most comfortable and most fluid with in terms of having read so many different pieces and books and just works of fiction, as well as writing it all my life and just telling stories since I could basically talk. And then there comes poetry, which I actually have the most videos about in this channel, and to be honest, it is my weakest genre, and it is the genre I most want and need improvement on. I only got into poetry in 6th grade. I didn't actually have any professional instruction, and for the record, I do not count the day or two you spent in class on poetry as professional instruction. I'm sorry, teachers that I've had in the past, but I actually do count my poetry instruction as only beginning less than a year ago. And like I said, my poetry needs some serious work. To bring it back to what I'm actually talking about, in my English school, there is this special group of 4 people actually only, and 5 including myself now, who are taken out of PE every Monday to work with who is called the poet in residence, who is just a brilliant writer and teacher. And basically she gives us prompts, she gives us poems to look at, pieces of text to put line breaks in, and basically everything you could hope for and want from a poetry teacher. And the point is that these kids who are already in it are either in my grade or slightly higher, and they are doing their A and AS levels for creative writing. And don't even get me started on trying to explain the British school system, just know it's like higher than you normally would be at your age. You sit around and have a blast. I've only been there, literally yesterday was my 2nd time ever, so I'm pretty sure I don't really have that much to judge. This is actually really embarrassing for me to admit, but I felt so intimidated yesterday. And I know I say this a lot in my journey / return to the dark side videos, where I'm just like, I'm surrounded by all these talented people kind of situation. And I do honestly mean that every single time. But here it's kind of different, mostly because they're doing this for an actual grade. These people have risen to the challenge of doing A and AS levels for creative writing. And we had this prompt, and it was a poem by Alice Osman, I believe, called A Full-Length Portrait of the Moon. And it completely personified the moon as a human woman and what she does, what she is, what she can do to you and your emotions and just everything going on in your life. And it was a brilliant poem. I think I've never found a classically famous poet that I've related to more with her words in terms of an entire poem, not just like little phrases. We then wrote our own a full-length portrait of whatever and tried to incorporate some of the techniques and turns of phrase that she used in her poem. I know that this person is never going to see this video and find my YouTube channel, but I'm not going to name names. There's this girl who's in this group of creative writing people. She's one of those people who is legitimately, not even joking, the smartest person in the grade. She's also one of those people who you know are just very cynical. I think that in terms of the kinds of poems that she sets out to write and the kind that we like to enjoy as a society in general, cynicism does work a lot in terms of criticizing the general idea of man. And as a joke, the instructor was like, "You don't like anything, do you?" And then she agreed. And then she was like, "Oh my god, this poem is terrible. I didn't like it at all. It's a bunch of rubbish." And when she read us her poem, Full-Length Portrait of the Wind, it was basically personifying, then adding some relatives to the personification, and then some friends and enemies and family members and a whole town surrounding this personification of the wind. And in terms of my own critical opinion, it was one of the best first drafts that I have ever heard in terms of both the equal balanced sides of emotional and visual resonance. And of course she said that she hated it. After I walked away from, I want to call it class that day, I was having one of those moments of doubt where I was just like, why the hell am I here? Because the instructor actually hinted what I already knew, which was the fact that my poem, no matter how, I don't know if the word good it was, it still needed a lot of revision. It needed to have more imagery added and to have the whole idea of the poem brought back and reincorporated into it so you don't forget as a reader slash listener. And I get it, I understand it, but the fact that she had to point it out also kind of, I don't know, dealt a blow to my ego, just because it's like, why am I here? These are legitimately the 3 smartest people and best writers in my grade. Why am I here with them, listening to this brilliance they produce as first drafts? Like, I don't even know. And the one girl who is, I think, 1 or 2 grades ahead of us, she legitimately is Hungarian, and English is certainly not her first language, but she manages to write poetry in English that just blows me away to no end. Point is, I just had the serious realization that I don't actually know who I am as a poet. I don't know what I'm trying to say, and my problem, I don't know if you want to call it a problem even, that I've always had is the fact that I write my poetry from way too much of a personal place. And not personal in terms of personal and being deep is bad, but more of just personal as in making it too much about myself and not relatable to everyone else, and a lot more abstract concepts in my poetry versus imagery. And the balance for the particular setting and context you're in is really what makes a good poem in my opinion. And then I kind of complained about this to my friends, and they basically said to me what I already knew in my head, which was, look, Sophia, you've been invited by the school's poet in residence to join this group for the time you're here in England. If you're not quite up to snuff, you're at least up to par on who actually deserves to be there in the group. And that's what I have to tell myself when I go next Monday, and that's what I have to keep telling myself throughout my entire life whenever I encounter people who are a much higher caliber than I am, no matter what it is, whether it's math or science or writing. And essentially, this entire section of the video was a rant on my part about, 1, recognizing the fact that I don't have as much instruction as they do. They've been doing this for the past 3-4 years. And 2, that I know that I don't have the identity and presence and tools and technicalities that it takes, in my opinion, to be a good poet. I know what the issue is, and a lot of times I will talk to someone or even just turn on the camera to work through things, and that's what truly makes these writing vlogs. I'm not trying to give you advice in these videos. This is more for me in terms of my own journey of who I am as a writer, how I'm developing, what's going on, because I know I'm going to forget this otherwise, and I know I'm going to want to remember it too, because maybe a year from now, maybe even next month, that's just wishful thinking, I will be able to say that I know I'm never going to be as good as this person, but I do know enough about myself as a poet to feel proud of what I've produced. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I will certainly make a video when it does. And this was basically a probably 15-minute long video of me being self-pitying. That's essentially what I've been doing this entire video. Anyways, tell me in the comments below what you're currently writing, how your writing life is, what you do when you are hit with disappointment or comparison to other people, and just how you deal with it as well. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Keep calm and write on. I'll see you in a video soon. Goodbye.